Episode 8, God in the Basement. Rebuilding does not always look like a big breakthrough. Sometimes it looks like a quiet room, a new responsibility, and one unexpected door opening. Kang got me off the street. Elder gave me truth, but Temple City gave me something I didn't even know I needed yet. A quiet place to become useful again. Sometimes God doesn't open the next chapter with thunder. Sometimes he opens a basement door. Last episode, I talked about Elder telling me that maybe God had me right where he wanted me. That was very hard to hear when I was losing everything. But later, when doors started opening in ways I could not have planned, I began to understand what he meant. Sleeping on Kang's couch was a necessary part of my recovery. I was trying to regain stability. I got a part-time job taking a photo booth out to graduation parties, birthday parties, holiday events. I was still studying a lot about web marketing, still trying to find a new path. I was grateful. I was very grateful, but also just kind of knowing that I needed to move forward. I couldn't live on King's couch forever, right? A rescue is not the same as a rebuild. Kang helped me survive. Now I had to become stable. So what does that next step look like? I didn't know. Your guess is as good as mine. But I was trying to stay active, and I had a contact at Chime TV, which is the first Chinese American cable network. And so they started calling me for a few projects, very, ad hoc. It was just very here or there. But I was shooting some fashion shows. There was an acting school that was it in Temple City? I don't know. It wasn't too far. It was in one of the Chinese communities and catered to a lot of that community. And so with the work at Chime TV, there was contacts that would bring me in for various projects at the school. Sometimes I was doing stuff that wasn't even for pay, it was just a way to get out of the house, give Kang some space and network, and stay connected to possibility. I didn't always know which opportunity would matter. I just knew that I had to keep showing up. And one event that was being thrown by the school, I wish I could remember the name of the school, but I think it was like, I don't remember. At one of the events for the Chinese acting school, there was a woman on the board of directors, and she got my attention, and she was asking me to shoot some pictures. They were doing a fashion show at like the local mall to I guess it was like an event that would help attract more potential students to go to the school. So they put on this fashion show in the middle of the mall, and so I was invited to come and film that. And so when I went out there and did that, a woman on the board of directors for the school asked me, "Hey, can you shoot some specific pictures of this one particular girl?" And she was 11 years old, but If they had told me she was 15, 16, I would have believed it because she was already 5'7", something like that. And, just long hair, just her look, she looked more if she had a driver's license, I just like I said, I would have believed it. Um, and so the school was really big on her. In fact, she already had an agent. People saw a lot of potential in her. So I pulled her over to the side and we went off and kind of did this just a real quick impromptu photo shoot in this mall, and it came out really nice. Her mother just loved it, and I didn't know, I was just happy to do it, and I wasn't charging her anything. It was very rewarding to see the mom's reaction, and it wasn't at that event, but at another event. I think it was like some sort of party, launch party for Chime TV, and they had this real extravagant like event, food, performances. I mean, it was outstanding. Um, that mother was at the event, and I had been invited to go to this event. And I was sitting with the same woman that was on the board of directors, and turns out her and the mother were friends, and um, the mother, will name her Heidi because she's a big part of the story here. Um, Heidi had been seeking me out, unbeknownst to me, anyway, to do more photos, and potentially manage and coach her daughter. So she wanted to get to know me, and at this launch party, she pulls out pictures of one of her properties up at Lake Arrowhead, um, and it was a beautiful log cabin, 3-story log cabin, beautiful, just, it just amazing vacation property, and so, she invites me. She says she's gonna have some other guests coming, a bunch of guests coming some particular weekend, and she says, "You should come. You should come, you should meet them." They have, I don't know, they had 4 or 5 kids, and some of them were into acting as well, acting and modeling. And so she said, "You should come and shoot pictures of this, visit. And, they may even wanna book you to shoot pictures of their kids." So, it's not like my schedule was full of stuff. So, I said, "Yeah, totally, I'd love to consider it. I just had to make sure I didn't have any photo booth events that were gonna conflict." And as it turns out, I didn't. So I went up and I spent that weekend with them, and we had a wonderful time. It was a great time. Heidi made the most amazing blueberry pancakes I've ever had. And we just had a lot of fun. I mean, Lake Arrowhead is like it's like a picture book. In the summer, it's beautiful water. We were going out on the boat and going around sightseeing all the amazing homes right on the lake. And in the winter, I mean, it looked like something out of Santa Claus a Christmas type of storybook. It was just beautiful. All the snow, the trees, it was just amazing place. Um, I thought, and so yeah, I'd never been in the snow in California, in Southern California. I didn't really understand that there was places like that. But literally, you could drive to Lake Arrowhead, which is maybe like a 90-minute drive from LA, and you're so high up in the mountains that you're gonna get snow, and a lot of snow, not just barely snow. I mean, you could be snowed in, you know, snow where you think you're in Minnesota or somewhere. So we became good friends, and Heidi asked me to uh, shoot a portfolio for her daughter, um, and create an Instagram account. Create like basically the digital footprint she would need for the business. So she hired me to do that. And then she wanted me to work with her on her acting and 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 naturally the modeling too, because we're taking photos. So we're working out positions and poses, that kind of thing. Anyway, so that was just kind of inherent in taking the pictures. Um, and as the end of the summer wrapped up and the winter came, we had spent a good amount of time together, all getting to know each other. And I came back to Michigan for Christmas. And while I was in Michigan, she would call and check on me and see how things were going and, talk about, you need to hurry up and come back. And I was humored by it. Heidi had a lot of personality, and a great sense of humor. She's a lot of fun. Her property management, she loved to have like karaoke setups. She was an entertainer. She was just naturally charismatic and liked to have things planned for visitors. I mean, she if she had lived in Lake Arrowhead, like if she lived there at the same time, she could be like a great bed and breakfast host. I mean, and tour guide. I think that's her gift. She calls me one day and we're on the phone. And at this point in time, I've never mentioned to her at all any of my hardship. She doesn't know anything about any of it. Um, as far as she's concerned, I'm pretty well connected, shooting the occasional event once or twice a month for Chime TV, or you know, I was good friends with her daughter's agent as well. So, um, one day she just says, she asked me, "When you come back from Michigan, when you come back to California, where are you gonna stay?" And I told her, "Oh, I've been living in Garden Grove, is where my buddy's place was, and I was planning to go back to where had been staying all this time," without revealing the details of that. And she says, "Why don't you come and move in with me?" She had first of all, her house in LA, or in Temple City, more specifically, was, I don't know, 5, 6 bedrooms. And she rented out at least a couple bedrooms to a young married couple with a baby. She had her mother and her 90 something year old mother living in one of the rooms. She also rented out to like a young college student. She was in like cosmetology school, I believe. Yeah, she was doing she was doing makeup, hair and makeup, and actually would do hair and makeup on her daughter before I would shoot her for some of the shoots. So she had like an extra surplus of rooms, plenty of space in this house. And so she had a studio in the basement that was like a man cave, you know. There was a huge, I don't know, 65 inch screen TV, and a little bar with, I think, a microwave, little places you could stuff some food. Um, it was a couch, nice big couch, lazy boy. Uh, it was just, I could totally tell it had been a man cave of some sort. It wasn't luxury per se, but after sleeping in a car and then staying on a couch in the middle of a living room with 2 bedrooms on each side, um, privacy that this basement studio gave me was enormous. It gave me space to breathe. It gave me some dignity. And so, that was completely unexpected. So when she asked me to move in with her, she said, she didn't need any rent from me. What she wanted from me was for me to help with her daughter's career preparation, and also some help managing the properties because she would drive back and forth between LA and Lake Arrowhead very often. She was basically renting the Lake Arrowhead property off of Airbnb. And so there would be changeovers quite frequently, sometimes at least once a week, sometimes twice a week. So her mother was older. Like I said, her mother was in her 90s, and her mother would prepare dinner for her daughter, but her mother wasn't really up for the full-time job of taking care of an 11-year-old fifth grade student. Um, so for basically for in exchange for rent, I became like I was her daughter's guardian when Heidi was out of town. When Heidi was up in the mountains. I became like the guardian, and she made that known to her school, um, wherever she needed to make that known. It was that was the situation. So, I became like, I was her manager slash nanny in a sense because whenever her manny, I was her manny. Um, because the girl, she'd bike to school in the morning, but if it rained, which doesn't happen that often in Southern Cali, but when it did rain, I'd have to drive her to school. Um, for the most part, made sure she had breakfast, make sure she was cleaning her room, uh, not leaving dishes all over the house, which she loved to do, making sure she was doing her homework and not playing Roblox all hours of the night, which she would sneak in and do that too. I'd have to take the tablet. It was I even the school had issued them a computer, which, when I was in school, I don't even think they issued us calculators. But school issues these computers. One time I had to call up to the school. I was like, "Do you guys have to give them a computer? Because I'm having a hard time keeping this girl off of the Roblox was the main thing. She was always trying to play that Roblox, and I really don't know what the obsession is with that, but that seems to be a very, very popular game for young people. So I had to help her with her schooling, discipline, chores, um, making sure she went to bed so she could get up in the morning, breakfast, transportation. She had this this little tiny dog, Luca. I loved Luca. But I wanted to make sure that, well, secretly, I didn't tell young princess, but I would walk Luca while she was at school. I'd go out with Luca, put him on the leash, and just walk him around the block or something. But I wouldn't tell young princess because I wanted to make sure that she took responsibility for her dog. Uh, but I think I have some videos. I'm gonna look on my phone and see if I have any pictures or videos of Luca. And if I do, I'm gonna put them in the blog because he was so cute. And at some point, Heidi had planned a road trip that was going to last for like a month. It was like a group of people. She had a Tesla, and it was like a Tesla club that she was a part of, and they would customize their Teslas for these long range trips and drive across the country, and she was really hoping to do that. So she planned to leave for a month, and that made it so young princess was a large priority for me. So I quickly learned how much responsibility children require, how much work and oversight they demand, especially a young tween that thinks they're grown. So, and is used to people giving her the benefit of the doubt because they believe that she's older than she is. And so she knew how to make that work for her on a lot of occasions. I had to communicate with her grandmother through Google Translate because grandma, I called her Nai Nai. I think Nai Nai means grandma in Chinese. And so I had to communicate with her through Google Translate. And so that was a huge help because her grandmother would be telling her to do stuff that she would ignore her grandmother. And I would have to I just kn I didn't know what was going on. I could just tell that grandma was, unhappy or, trying to yell, demand that, young princess do something that she wasn't doing. And so, I had to come up with creative ways to, I guess, punish or reprimand young princess, because, so I'd often, like, she'd have to give me her tablet at a certain time at night. I'd have to hide the TV remotes so she couldn't just come home and turn on the TV without making sure the dog got to get out and use the bathroom. Just kid stuff. Typical not teenage, but typical kid stuff to a large degree. And I remember we did every Tuesday night was what I called life class. And she hated well, at least she acted like she hated it, but she usually turned out she loved it because I would talk about just different little life lessons, things that she needs to know. And oftentimes I would play a movie like, something from my childhood, like Karate Kid. I had her watch that series, and, she loved the whole Mr. Miyagi and whatnot. So, we got pretty close, but the thing is, what I didn't know what was happening. Up until that point, I'd say Hollywood made me chase importance, and that's what Hollywood does. Temple City taught me usefulness. That was the situation I was in. At Kang's place, I wasn't so much useful. I wasn't very I might have watched his kids once or twice while he was away, but for the most part, that was not my responsibility at all. Um, and me and his kids were friendly. We watched TV or whatever. They were, sweet girls, but I didn't, I wasn't like their parent or their guardian when he went away. That because he hardly ever did that. He only had them every other weekend and then every Wednesday. So he pretty much made sure that in the time that he could get with his kids, he spent as much time as he could because he loved them and he wanted them to know that. Um, Heidi's situation was different. Of course, she loved young princess, but it was just a different dynamic. She had her child all the time. And during this time, while I was living in Temple City, the seeds from my life insurance website started to grow. They started to pay off. Um, I was a little slow to recognize it at first, and I'll explain what I mean by that. But overall, my business started growing. Essentially, my new life was beginning to take root. Now, the comeback didn't arrive all at once. It started quietly with responsibilities during the day and website momentum building in the background. And so the lesson here is that sometimes the door God opens does not, I don't know, it doesn't look like the dream you prayed for. It may look like service. It may look like responsibility. It may look like helping someone else while you're still healing. But that small door may be the beginning of your rebuild. And in my case, Heidi didn't know anything about my hardship. Like I said, she had no idea. Uh, she didn't know she was helping me rebuild. She just knew she needed help. And somehow that became provision for both of us. So my closing question here is, are you waiting for a big miracle while overlooking the quiet door that is already opened? Or where is life asking you to become useful again before it makes you visible again? Let me repeat that. Where is life asking you to become useful again before it makes you visible again? Next episode, I'll talk about how I moved from hustle to strategy and why working hard is not enough if you don't build a system. My main message in this episode: God did not just give me shelter. At a certain point, I guess when he decided I was ready, he gave me responsibility. And that responsibility helped restore my identity. I felt relevant again. I felt useful again. Yeah, maybe the basement wasn't, maybe the basement was not the dream, right? But it was the room where the next version of me started breathing again. And in hindsight, I see how that short chapter of my life was so critical to my reinvention. Thank you so much.